So being that you're classically conditioned to, I'm getting the tingles, I'm getting the focus, I'm getting the pump, that must mean I have this external energy. Your body's still going to react as if it's getting caffeine, which is going to be huge because it's going to have that same kind of ritualistic response. Today we're here to talk about adrenal fatigue, pretty much?
Yeah, primarily adrenal fatigue and the myth of people thinking that you need to switch up your pre-workout when it stops working. You remember working at GNC? That happened to us all the time.
Yeah,
way back
sure.
in the day. And like, oh, I just need to cycle onto a different pre-workout because mine isn't cutting it anymore. That's more likely than not has nothing to do with the actual pre-workout. At least if you're taking a good pre-workout, like Bucked Up or BAMF or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, why don't we deep dive first into adrenal fatigue and kind of how one gets adrenal fatigue, what the side effects are, and then how we can overcome adrenal fatigue.
For those of you who don't know, adrenals are responsible for quite a few things, but one of them would be they're the body's storehouse for energy. They also release adrenaline and cortisol, both in response to stress. Cortisol hangs out longer than adrenaline. Adrenaline's kind of like, the high you would get. It's the fight or flight response. But when that tapers off, cortisol still remains. It's like the person that hangs out at the party longer than you want them to after you've already tried to go to bed. Causing additional stress, anxiety. It can be catabolic.
Slows down your metabolism, but there is a purpose that they serve from an evolutionary mechanism standpoint. Basically, you have adrenaline. So back in the day, you had to run from a saber-toothed tiger, or you hear stories of a child being pinned under a car and a mother can lift the car off that child. That's their body's adrenals pumping that adrenaline and rerouting all of its power into that specific function. So obviously there's a huge cost for this in the short term and in the long term. There's no such thing as a biological free lunch. So the evolutionary mechanism for cortisol was something like long due stress. Let's just say we have a pretty comfortable life now, but for generations, your great-grandparents, generations before them, a harsh winter or no crops coming in was completely different than a harsh winter was for us. So their body would crank that cortisol, get maximum gas mileage out of every single calorie, all of the stored fat, bringing their metabolism down to a screech halt and switching into long-term survival. So if you're adrift at sea, lost in the woods, kidnapped by polygamists, I don't know, but it's going to be that.
Sounds like a personal experience.
Yeah, it's going to be that. It's going to be that cortisol spike that's going to help increase your chances of staying alive in those situations. Oh, speaking of adrenal fatigue, how's the energy drink today?
It's helping with my adrenal fatigue.
Yeah, that's a good
temporarily.
That's a good 300 milligrams of caffeine. I think that actually may increase your anxiety by triggering your fight or flight response.
It should trigger my fight or flight response as well as my cortisol. So it'll help me survive all of my other external issues, internal issues actually.
Yeah, there's actually fight flight. Personally, I'm a freezer because I think all of us in our age group are because of Jurassic Park, and when you see the T-Rex, you're supposed to freeze. So I think that taught a whole generation of kids to just freeze. Big misconception though. If you're ever attacked by a T-Rex, don't freeze. That's just shit Jurassic Park made up. You run, you do whatever you can, but do not freeze.
Have studies shown this or anything?
Sure.
Okay, cool. I just didn't know if
we're just making all this up as we go along. Yes, do not freeze if you see a T-Rex. But you know what? If somebody gets in a horrible T-Rex accident, let them come sue me. I don't care. But
so if you were near a T-Rex, wouldn't that kind of kick up your adrenaline, your cortisol?
For sure.
Also responsible for stress hormones. Anyway, so caffeine actually will spike adrenaline. It's kind of like the high you would get. And cortisol gets spiked or at least elevated for that as well, which can trigger, irritability, anxiety. The problem is that your adrenals should be producing energy on their own, which when I first realized that there was something that produces energy inside my system, I was blown away because I've always just thought energy was...
Yeah, it comes from coffee.
It comes from caffeine,
drinks, or
It's like, wait, I thought it was always synthetic. I didn't know my body could do that.
Illicit drugs.
Yeah.
So
For the win.
Some signs that you may be suffering from adrenal fatigue: difficulty waking up in the morning, difficulty going to sleep,
Needing energy drinks throughout the day.
Needing energy drinks throughout the day, crashing, around 2 or 3 o'clock, increased irritability, inability to cope with stress in a healthy way. A lot of these are just signs of adrenal fatigue, and it's time to take action to restore your adrenals, which would lead to things like
drinking more caffeine.
Yes.
No, the way to do it really would be to, this is going to sound rough, I feel attacked too, cut out caffeine.
Oh.
You might, experience, you've done it before. I keep on meaning to do it, but I haven't yet.
I've done it a few times, this adrenal reset. Now, I will recommend, if you have a caffeine consumption problem, to taper it down. I have done it cold turkey. I don't get migraines. I'm not one of those kinds of girls. I usually feel pretty good all the time. This is the first time in my life that I was getting pounding headaches and suffering from legit withdrawals, and I don't have an addictive personality, and this was the first time where I genuinely in my life felt like an addict. So the second time I did a week tapering down, and then I eventually went to 0, and it helped a lot. But you're gonna have a really rough week tapering down and a really rough week after that. But when you hit that day 14 to 17 mark, you're gonna start feeling amazing. Like he was saying, your body can actually produce its own energy. It's not impossible. I know it sounds impossible, but it's just highly improbable, but we can get you there.
And the best way to get you there is, for example, let's say you've been taking Woke AF or BAMF, start off half scoop.
Or switch to a bucked up.
Or switch to a bucked up, yeah. And if you still, you can throw in the non-stim bucked up with your Woke AF, BAMF, or regular bucked up, like, just taper down slowly. And then for the duration of time when you're needing to stay away from caffeine in general, stick to the non-stim pre-workout. Our non-stim bucked up has literally everything our regular bucked up has for pump, endurance, stamina, focus.
Hydration. And you're still going to get the tingles. So being that you're classically conditioned to, I'm getting the tingles, I'm getting the focus, I'm getting the pump, that must mean I have this external energy. Your body's still going to react as if it's getting caffeine, which is going to be huge because it's going to have that same kind of ritualistic response. So you start getting the tingles. It's like Pavlov ringing the bells for his dogs, and you're going to start salivating. You know what I mean?
May not start salivating.
Yeah. You're going to get in the zone. You're like, it's workout time. So trust me, do the switch. Your body is going to thank you for it in the long run.
And little pro tip that helps a lot for that switch, if you really want to just kick it into gear, throw in some of the raw beta alanine too, because it is the beta alanines that's responsible for that itch. There's no way to ignore getting into your workout than intensifying the tingles. Like, it's not the caffeine that's going to do that. Right now we actually have 2 new flavors of non-stim bucked up.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, strawberry kiwi and orange mango.
Nice.
So it's perfect in time for you to fix your adrenals.
Yeah. Well, I think
that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a new blog.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to hear more, goes into a little bit more depth, check it out.
A lot of T-Rex survival tips?
No, but I can throw that in there.
Yeah. Well, next week we'll come at you with a new blog on T-Rex survival tips.